Test 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Whoever told me that, thank you.
Okay, we're going to start. My introduction tonight to Paul is a little more formal. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Gloria Mindock, editor and publisher of Chevrey-Nabarva Press. And I'm so happy to introduce Paul and his book, Becoming Mirsky. And it is his 7th collection. And Karen Schubert did the cover, and she did such a wonderful job. So thank you, Karen.
Yes, thank you, Karen.
When I first read Becoming Mirsky, I knew I just had to publish it. And I would like to read part of a blurb by Robert Scottolero. Every so often, a memoir is penned that transcends a literary filigree of recollections and gives us an authentic, deeply felt, and brilliantly written accounting. This sums up why I published Becoming Mirsky. Paul has been the recipient of many honors, and here are some of them. Kiss Kiss, his last flash collection, was a finalist for the Best Indie Awards for Short Story Collections in 2019. Paul had a micro story selected for the 2018 Norton Anthology, and New Micro Exceptionally Short Fiction was one of the winners in 2016. The Best Small Fictions and his story Mom's Goodbye was chosen as the winner of the 2016 Fiction Southeast Editors Prize. Paul was also nominated for the 2019 Best Small Fiction Series and had a story accepted for the 2022 Best of Microfiction. He has been longlisted for the Wigleaf Top 50. He's widely published with over 800 stories published in the US and overseas in some countries such as Great Britain, Sweden, India, Australia, just to name a few. Paul hosts the monthly Zoom FBomb Global Flash Fiction reading series, and it's really an honor to turn it over to Paul.
Thank you, Gloria. Let me ask everybody if they can hear me okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to start a story. I'm start reading a story, and then Joshua will take the second half of the story, which is the second. It's actually another story, but it's part of this first story. Is that correct? Okay. The story is called Shabbos Goy. Shabbos Goy is a Gentile doing physical work for a Jew on the Sabbath. The rabbi of my youth, who shall be nameless, because I swore to myself that I would never utter his name again, called me into his office one Saturday morning. In this Orthodox shul, only those saying Kaddish stood or even remained in the shul. The rabbi would leave the bima during this prayer. His parents were still living, and he used his time to take a break from leading the services. This is when he called me in. His office was very small and windowless, and the walls showed leak marks. His smell was the smell of the room, and I felt a little nauseous, as I always did when I had to be in his office. The floor was littered with books and papers, and there's room left only for two wooden slatted folding chairs that faced his desk. "Sit down," the rabbi said. I'd been there many times before, too many, and not once had he asked me to sit. Knees knocking, I sat. "Reuven, I want you to go to my house and do something for my wife." He took off his glasses, fogged them with his breath, and wiped them off with his tie. He never called me by my first name before. I always believed that he thought I only had one name, Mirsky. "Yes, Rabbi, what would you like me to do?" "I want you to light the gas stove for her." I noticed his frayed white collar as he took off his tallis and hung it up. He sat down. His collar was dirty, too. I saw he had a bunch of long black hairs growing out of his ears. "It's Shabbos, Rabbi. What about Mr. Farley?" I asked. Mr. Farley owned a small variety store across the street from our shul. He was the person who would always turn on or off the lights on Shabbos. He was our Shabbos goy and was relied on heavily. In fact, if he didn't unlock the door, no one else would. Turning on lights, locking doors, any manual labor was not permitted, so we relied on Mr. Farley. "He's ill today," the rabbi said, with a hint of exasperation in his voice. "The first time in over 25 years, he can't do his duties. And to think, just last month, the congregation presented him with a special Shabbos Goy plaque at a Sunday men's club brunch. But today, even from his sickbed, he came in, opened the shul, turned on the lights, and only then went home. I would have had him do it, but he can't. And my wife, who, as you and everyone else knows, is a little scatterbrained, forgot to light the stove before sundown yesterday. So I need someone to do this, and I'm sending you." "Well, why can't it wait till sundown, Rabbi?" Rising from his chair and leaning over his desk, glaring at me, he said, "Don't question me. Go to my house." "But it's a sin, Rabbi. I don't want to sin." I stood in my hand-me-down blue serge suit, hands in coat pockets, shuffling my feet, looking down at my shoes. "Who are you to tell a rabbi what is and what isn't a sin, you little pisher? If I tell you it's okay to do something, then it's not a sin. Understand?" "No." "Go now," Mirsky yelled. "You need more trouble than you already have in this world." I was looking down at my scuffed shoes, realizing I was getting into trouble and turning red. Not moving, I said, "What doesn't your wife light the oven, Rabbi?" "Shame on you for questioning me and mentioning my wife. But if you don't do this, Mirsky, I'll tell your mother you don't know your Hebrew well enough to have a Saturday bar mitzvah. Remember, you don't pay dues here. You're a charity case." The rabbi looked satisfied with himself. "You'll do your Haftorah on a Monday when all of your friends are in school. Do we understand each other?" He had me do other things in the past because we were poor and couldn't afford the dues. It's your way of repaying the shul. You just can't take. You must do some giving, he said more than once. My mother, like every other woman in the congregation, loved the rabbi. But with the Rebbitzin, it was a different story. She and the rabbi never walked together. She always walked or stood behind him, and I often heard him call her a klutz and make fun of her to others while she stood there. When she lost the last baby, she didn't come to shul for a month. The rabbi said she felt ashamed for stumbling down the basement stairs and having to stay in the hospital for almost a week. He told his congregants that she had miscarried and to please let her be and not visit her. This made the women love him even more, and gossip about his wife being a burden to such a fine young man. It was not unusual for him to be invited for dinner at a congregant's house and not bringing his wife along. So I cleaned the benches, waxed the ark, picked up papers around the shul, and do what no one else wanted to do. But this was different. I didn't understand why the rabbi's wife wasn't in shul and sitting in the balcony with the other women, and why she needed the oven turned on during Shabbos. The rabbi got up, put on his tallis, and returned to the bima. I slowly walked to the rabbi's house, kicking stones ahead of me. I rang the bell, and the rabbi's wife opened the door a crack, and in the dark I could only see her shadow. She said hurriedly, "Go around to the back door." She let me in, and without looking at me, pointed to the stove. "I forgot to light it before Shabbos," she mumbled. Holding a broom, she stood by the wall as if she were trying to become one with it. I took a wooden mat from the box and lit the pilot lights on the burner. "They're lit," I told her, sneaking a glance her way. Her wig was slightly off center, and she turned away from me, but not before I saw her face was bruised on one side. Her lip hung down, and her cheek was swollen. She saw me peeking and moved back deeper into the shadows. "Oven too," she mumbled. Getting down on my knees in my shul clothes, I opened the door and lit the oven pilot light. As I was brushing off my knees, I saw the counter with peeled potatoes and carrots and several chickens lying on a board next to the sink. "Go," she said. "Mursky," I said, and ran out of the house, heading back to the shul. Thank you.
Liar. As with many of the women, my mother left shul after the first service. She would go home and prepare a cold lunch from the Erev Shabbos leftovers. It would be waiting for my brothers and me when we got home after we changed into our play clothes. Leaving the rabbi's house running, I rounded the corner 1 block from shul and had to stop before slamming into a group of women. They had the sidewalk blocked, and I couldn't cut into the street and go around them because of the parked cars. I could hear them jabbering away as I stopped. "What are you doing out of shul?" my mother asked, moving to the front of the group. The other ladies stood behind my mother and said nothing. "I was on an errand for the rabbi," I told her. "On Shabbos? The rabbi sent you on an errand? Ha!" my mother said. The other women whispered to each other and shook their heads. "And did this errand cause you to get your Shabbat clothes dirty?" "Yes," I said. "I have to go back to shul now," I told her. "Oh, now you want to go to shul. Where have you been? Tell me." "I told you, Mom." Surrounded by the women who had crept up around my mother, her lips quivering as they do when she's really angry, she asked in a very controlled voice, "And what was this errand for our rabbi that was so important as to take you out of shul?" "He sent me to his house," I said. "His house?" "Yes." "Why did the rabbi send you to his house?" my mother asked. "He needed me to do something for the Rebbitzin," I said. "What?" she demanded. I looked down at the sidewalk and pushed a pebble around with my shoe. "Well," she demanded. "To light the oven for the Rebbitzin," I confessed. "Light the oven on Shabbos? You are going to stand there and tell me that you are taking Mr. Farley's place as the shul's new Shabbos goy?" my mother asked, raising both hands to her heart. Her slap across my face sent me into the bushes where a hole was ripped in my only suit coat. Tears welled in my mother's eyes. Liar, wait till I get you home. I got up and took off running. At the corner, I turned around to see if she was chasing me. She wasn't. The other women continued on as one, but my mother, handkerchief in hand, stood alone, waiting for the light to change. It was after dark when I finally succumbed to hunger and fatigue and went home to get what was coming to me. I immediately went up to the bedroom I shared with my older brother, Shelley, and changed out of my Shabbos suit into dungarees and a polo shirt. Mark, my younger brother, was sleeping. I walked slowly down the stairs and into the kitchen, passing the living room where my mother sat, head in her hands, talking on the phone. Shelley looked up from his book and smiled and did a neck slash with his finger. He had probably been waiting hours for me to come home to get my beating. There was a plate on the table with a drumstick, a baked potato, and a mixture of peas and carrots. It wasn't hot or cold, but I ate it down quickly and opened the refrigerator looking for dessert. I took out a small glass bowl of red Jell-O and ate it standing. Feeling fortified, I went into the living room and sat down on the couch. I could feel its springs pushing into my legs. Do you have any idea how much you shamed me in front of the other women? My mother grabbed a fistful of her hair in each hand. Her face was red and wet, her knuckles white. Mom, please don't cry. I won't punish you if you tell the truth, she lied. This time you should tell Mom the truth, Shelley smiled. I did. Why don't you mind your own business? She said, that was Mrs. Levine on the phone who spoke to Mrs. Cutler, who mentioned to the rabbi our running into you coming back from his house. The rabbi said he didn't know what she was talking about. There's got to be a mistake, Mom. Geez, that's what happened, I said. He's calling the rabbi a liar, Mom. Shelley was smiling. I wish God would take me, my mother pleaded. I can't handle this anymore. I can't face my neighbors and certainly not the rabbi. Mom always knew that her wishing for death was the surefire way to bring out the truth and apologies. I said nothing. Shelley smirked at me when Mom wasn't looking. I was going to get a beating and my brother put down his book to watch. Well, Mom asked. Tell Shelley to stop smirking at me, I said. Shelley had the book back up by the time my mother turned toward him. Don't change the subject. I asked you a question. I said nothing. Mom turned her back and hung her head. Where did I go wrong? I tried my best to raise you as good, decent kids, and what do I get? I get a son who has no shame and can lie with a straight face. I wish I were dead. Mom, don't say that, Shelley said, running over to Mom, hugging her. We need you. Don't wish that. I didn't cry. Shelley crossed his eyes at me. Other mothers believe their kids. Kicking the couch until my foot hurt, I said, I don't care about a bar mitzvah anymore. Stomping out of the room, I wished that my mother would die. I had my bar mitzvah on a Monday with none of my friends there, only a bunch of old men smelling of snuff, my mother, grandfather, my brothers, Shelley and Mark. Shelley didn't want to take off from school, but Mom made him take a half day. Mark was too young for school. I chanted my Hebrew, but didn't make a speech. After the service, there was a bottle of 4 Roses brought by my grandfather, a decanter of wine, and some cookies and strudel my mother baked. I got no presents. I never got to stand on a chair after the blessing over the challah and wine, with all of my friends surrounding me as I tossed out chocolate bars from a box. I had watched all of my friends do that, and always got caught up in the excitement of trying to catch more than one, and watching the bar mitzvah boy toss extra Hershey bars towards his closest friends and try to keep them from the kids he really didn't like. Standing on the chair tossing out chocolates was the culmination of the ceremony, the part where everyone looked up to you. On my bar mitzvah day, no one looked up to me. My grandfather shook my hand, as did many of the old timers in the shul, and they drank shots of Four Roses and ate my mother's strudel and cookies.
Joshua. Next reader is Kathy Fish. And I'm supposed to have a bio for you, Kathy, so everybody knows you.
I sent you one, but that's all right. That's okay. So, Paul, should I read your story first or mine?
You should read whichever you're comfortable reading.
Okay. I just want to know that you're one of my favorite writers ever. And this book is fantastic. And I just love that you've got another collection out in the world. I chose First Funeral because it's a theme that runs through my own work for some reason. So I really love this story with all my heart. And I love Paul with all my heart too. So, First Funeral. Our mother sent my brother and me to sit next to our father. Don't fidget, she said. He doesn't like fidget. He's already upset, I said. He's sitting alone and crying. At least he loved your grandmother, she said. My older brother, by 1 year, didn't speak to our father because he moved and left us. I didn't care because he only spoke to me to correct me or call me names. Mom says we should sit by you. Don't talk or fidget, he said. Can we breathe or cry? His look said it all. Grandma was in a closed box at the head of the room. The funeral director, Robert L. Graves, walked from the anteroom where the family was receiving visitors. The immediate family entered and took their seats in the front 2 rows. A curtain parted behind Grandma and a string quartet played Russian music. My Aunt Lizzie, the only unmarried sister, walked over to us and spoke to my father. Ben, it's not too late to make amends. Go to Lily. My father didn't speak. Director Graves said, by request of the family. He pushed a button on the coffin and the top half opened. I asked my brother if Director Graves was going to saw Grandma in half. Don't be stupid, my father said, and got up and to get in line to see Grandma in her coffin. We followed him, and he stood still in front for a long time, staring down, and then kissed the coffin. My brother and I looked in at Grandma, and I said, she looks real. And my brother said, she is real, real dead. I reached in to touch her, and my brother told me touching a dead person was a sin. The band played a foxtrot. My father walked over to my mother and held his hand out. She paused, then took it, and they danced beautifully around the coffin, down the aisle, and back to my mother's seat, where my father bowed and returned to his seat. My mother always said that for a big man, Dad was light on his feet. I asked Dad if he felt light on his feet when he danced with Mom. He shot me another look. Director Graves introduced the rabbi who spoke in Hebrew, English, and threw in some Yiddish. He told stories about my grandfather leaving Russia, working and sending boat tickets for Grandma and his parents. Gramps sat, tears running down his cheeks. None of the 7 sisters spoke to each other until they got back to Grandpa's house and washed their hands from the pitcher and bowl on the front stoop, and then put the food out. Food loosened their tongues, and they spoke to each other, complimenting each dish, Mr. Graves and the rabbi. Dad never showed. I just love that story. I knew I was going to laugh at the part about sawing the grandma in half. I just couldn't. It's so funny. Okay, so this is a story of mine called Procession, and it came out a couple months ago in Swamp Pink. It was a procession. It was a march. We walked through the snow to the funeral home. We walked single file. Our teacher was dead. We were going to see the body. The funeral home was 4 blocks away. It was February. It was a march, a procession through the snow. We sat in folding chairs in our coats and boots. We took turns kneeling before the casket. We were told to say a little goodbye. We were instructed not to touch. The snow on our boots melted into the carpet. It was a thick shag pile. It was a chic, sad pile. The principal apologized to the man in the suit. Our teacher had long, straight hair one might call dishwater blonde. She wore bell-bottoms and hoop earrings and eyeshadow that sparkled. She arranged our desks in pods. She arranged our pods in desks. She encouraged collaboration. She called us collaborators. She'd say, "Attention, collaborators." She turned the picture of President Nixon upside down. She left Pope Paul right side up. She wore maternity tops with big bows at the neck, like a Christmas present. We'd been waiting for her that morning. The second bell rang. The principal came in and told us. We were allowed to read and play checkers and talk quietly amongst ourselves. 3 days later, we marched to see the body. It was a procession. It was like a field trip. We marched single file in the snow. At the funeral home, we stayed inside our coats and our boots. We weren't sure what to do. Our teacher didn't look right. It was our first dead body. She wasn't wearing a top with a bow. She was wearing a white dress like a wedding dress. Her hair lay in 2 long braids on either side of her boobs. She looked like a pioneer woman, a woman of the prairie. She'd always kept sanitary napkins and sanitary belts in her desk drawer, just in case. When I bled down my leg during the Christmas recital, she was prepared. When I bled down my leg into my anklet, I jumped off the back of the bleachers. Some of the other girls jumped too. I ran into the stall and locked the door. I sat bleeding into the toilet. The girls stood around outside the stall. They offered wetted tissues under the door. They didn't really like me. They were enjoying the drama. One of them thought to go tell our teacher. She came with a sanitary napkin and a sanitary belt in a brown paper bag. She talked me through it. She said, "Do you feel fresher now?" She put my socks into the paper bag. In her class, we were allowed to talk all we wanted. She wanted to feel our energy. She wanted a free exchange of ideas. She called us collaborators. After we said the rosary, we were herded back into another room. There were ham sandwiches and cookies on plates. We were told to take 1 ham sandwich and 1 cookie. We were told to eat them on the way back. The principal led the way. The kid who always cried was crying, and the kid who always threw up in the snow. The principal led us back. It was a procession. It was a march. We were little soldiers now, marching home. The snow was melting, and there were patches of exposed earth, and the air smelled like wet black dirt, the way it sometimes does in February, the way it sometimes makes you feel glad. When we got back, our desks were in rows. President Nixon was right side up. A man in wire-rimmed glasses was writing his name on the board. Thank you. Thanks.
Perfect follow-up to that story, Kev. Next reader Needs no introduction because I don't have one for her either. But everyone knows Nancy Stallman. And Nancy, I was telling people before you got here that Nod Gosh wrote me a note telling me that in the November of 21, I gave a prompt and she used it to develop a character in her new book. And I thought that was just neat. So Nancy, you're up with what for?
Hi, thank you. So I was going to read First Funeral as well, and I just realized that perhaps that we both got scheduled to read the same thing. So I am going to just pick something else, and if I am stepping on anybody else's toes down the road, I apologize. So I'm going to read The Last Person in Panic. Does that work for you, Paul?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, that's one of my favorite stories, and actually that's the story that made me help encourage Paul to put the Mirsky book together, because I just feel like he's so good at being funny and also being heart-wrenching at the same time. You know, it's really difficult to do both of those things together. So I'm going to read The Last Person in Panic, which is a story I've always loved. Father Panic Village in Bridgeport, Connecticut was the worst of the worst in the failed projects experiment, was scheduled to be demolished. And I wanted to see my old home one last time. I'm not sure why, but we only lived there for 2 years before moving to Marina Village. It was gloomy then and gloomy still when I arrived. Razor wire fences across from Panic for 2 long desolate blocks shielded the closed factories that spewed their pollution into the river they faced. All the buildings were shuttered with large for sale signs nailed to them. The police had stopped patrolling it on a regular basis years earlier for fear of getting shot. There was no official gang, but other gangs from different parts of town and other projects learned long ago not to enter. Drug sales took place in the open. Now the windows of the vacant units were boarded. Graffiti was everywhere. I drove onto the parking lot where we huddled to shoot craps or play blackjack, yet good memories and bad. The people who were being made to move protested about being thrown out of the only home some had ever known. Many were third-generation Father Panic people. In place of the 90 apartments, the city was going to build 10 small houses that would go by lottery to the dispossessed families. I drove the perimeter and then cut through the side streets, slowly seeing for the last time the ugliness of these 3-story brick buildings, once vibrant with kids playing, and the aged and unemployed people sitting around smoking and playing tonk for pennies. I saw the triangle of concrete where we held our wiffle ball games and our kick the can tourneys, but I heard that stopped when the drug dealers started claiming sections as their offices. I saw a young girl leaning against a building and I pulled to the curb. I walked over to her and said, "Hi, you've got to be the last person in Panic." I offered her a stick of gum. She took 2 and said, "One's for later." "How come you're still here? What are you, 15, 16? 14, and my mom told me to stay here till he calls for me." "How long ago was that?" "Couple of days." "Hungry?" She didn't answer, but her look said yes. "Come on, we'll go to the Hot Top Diner and get a good meal. Have you back in no time." She tentatively walked to my car and got in. I drove toward the diner when she said, Ella. Pretty name. My mama liked Ella Fitzgerald. I'm Mirsky, I said. What would you like to eat? Hot top okay? No, he'll be at the diner. I'd like a Happy Meal. We went through the drive-thru and Ella didn't order a Happy Meal. She asked if she could order extra for later, and I said, sure. And she ordered enough for 3 grown-ups and 8 fries all the way to Seaside Park, where I stopped the car facing the water and took out my own small bag of fries and a Coke. Do you live with your parents? I asked her. She didn't answer. Where are you going to go when they bulldoze Panic? She shrugged, and that's how our meal went. I told her there were places that would take her in and send her to school, places that were clean and she'd have friends in her own room, but she didn't respond. Finally, she folded her bag and put it on the floor. That was good, mister. I still have enough for another good meal tonight. I started the car. Ella slurped the last of her Coke and then reached over and put her hand on my crotch, grabbing the zipper with practiced hands. I pushed her hands away. Put your seatbelt on, I said. She began to unbutton her blouse. I'm woman enough for you. Button up, that's not why I bought you lunch. In the quiet, we reached Panic and I stopped the car. Here's my phone number. I gave her a business card. Call me if you want to go to one of those nice places I told you about. Listen, she said, give me $20, would you? Or he'll be angry, please. I gave her 2 tens and she opened the car door. Don't forget your food, I said. And she took the bags and ran towards the building. I watched her holding them out as an offering, opening her arms wide to Panic, as well as to her man. I drove off, my business card lying where Ella sat only minutes ago. So beautiful, Paul. This one gets me every time.
You did a good job. Thank you.
All right, and one for me. This is from new things I've been working on. I'm calling this one The Imagination. It's still very much in process. They say the king of big gulps was seduced by the imagination on a clear night when the stars were capricious and the Milky Way was expectant and the moon was slowly being consumed by itself. The imagination is said to appear like a pink bruise in the sky, a misplaced sunset, a sky carnival opening all the portals. And they say if you stare at it too long, you can become permanently enchanted. On the night he disappeared, the king of big gulps must have been doing it again, staring up at the pink swirling bruise in the dark for hours, because he was heard laughing madly outside in the cold, in the snow, without a coat. See, once you've felt the depths of pink and blue and you've felt that particular pastel warmth spread through your body, and you've tasted the Milky Way and you've eaten clouds, you hunger only for that again, for clouds in your mouth, your pupils permanently dilated, and by morning your body can be found half frozen with a look of rapture on your face. Died of ecstasy, they'll whisper. This card is a reminder. You went into the imagination together once. You were both young and had nothing to lose. They say the imagination is more powerful than any heroin, and you both released the tether to this world. You surrendered. You were not interested in returning. And the longer one stays, the harder it is to leave. Most people don't. But then one day life pushed you out. The king of big gulps, still the jack of tornadoes, would be chased out of the imagination by an entire team of baseball players throwing tomatoes. He left quietly in the middle of the night, gathering up a small band of followers and sneaking out of the imagination before anyone would notice him gone. You were told it was time to grow up. You can't live your life inside the imagination, they said. You were told to leave quickly because those who stayed would be unable to leave, their bodies aging at double time, as if all the moisture was being sucked out, even as their eyes remained bright. And so you too leave, Get a job, get married, have a kid, get divorced, remarried, do it again, get a degree, maybe a few, and you try to forget the sound of a rainstorm beating against the side of a vinyl tent wall on a random Tuesday, or what it was like to never need a watch, but always know the time. This card is asking you to consider which reality is more real. Were the skies really that pink? Or is that the melodramatic thrill of unsatisfied longing, the constant sting of nostalgia that gives meaning only through its absence? This is how the King of Big Gulps, always romantic, always escaping, found a way to slip through the cracks and disappear on a cold November night when the temptation was just too great. Remember me as I was, the note said. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Next reader is Karen Schauber. She'll read The Only Hope of the Jews. Her flash fiction appears in Fiction Southeast, OJAL, JMWWV, or JMWW, Disappointed Housewife, Ghost Parachute, Storge New World Writing, Seas Cows Bending Genres, Spelk, Aquamic, Frastic Review, McQueen's Quintily, Journal of Compressed Creative Arts, and elsewhere. She's received nominations for Pushcart, Best Small Fictions, Best Microfiction, and the spot on the Woodleaf long list. She creates wonderful Vancouver flash fiction. Karen.
Thanks, Paul. And congratulations to you. I absolutely love this collection. And thank you so much for trusting me with the cover.
You did the cover really justice. So thank you.
Pleasure. The Only Hope of the Jews was initially published in Unbroken Journal in 2017 and later reprinted in Miramichi Flash in 2022. There are so many in this collection that I am blown away by, but I will read this one, which I love. The Only Hope of the Jews. You're sitting on your stoop thinking how much you hate the stoop, the building you live in with 6 side-by-side apartments, now called townhouses, and the neighborhood. You hate the neighborhood because all of the stoops in all of the buildings and all of the wire fenced in tiny yards, smaller than a jail cell, look alike. And your 14-year-old self can't wait to get out of these projects and scrub the stigma off and live in a place where you don't need the roach exterminator every month. And head lice are the main pets for the little kids. And on top of it all, your family are the only Jews in all the buildings. There are lots of Blacks and Puerto Ricans who are mortal enemies, and plenty of white people. And there's a big Catholic church on the corner across from the corner store with its 2 pinballs, and playing those pinballs is your only solace here. You look to your left and you see a couple of older and bigger kids coming down the walk, and you reach behind you and grab the rock that you scraped against the cement stoop to make jagged edges that make your fist a weapon. And you don't care how big or how many Jew haters there are, you will go after them. Rock in hand, you'll punch them repeatedly until they subdue you and teach you a lesson. You know you'll never learn your lesson. And when your mother comes home, she'll take one look at you and punish you for fighting. And you never tell her you're the only hope of the Jews. And she thinks you've gotten to be a ruffian since you had to move to this neighborhood, and that, unlike your brother and sisters, you're hanging out with the wrong crowd. You take your punishment from her and dream of owning a car and driving as far away from that stoop as you can, and never having to carry a jagged rock in your pocket again.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks. And I'll read one of mine called Bird. It's midweek in the quartier in front of the museum's commanding staircase, and the cellist is playing a saraband. His tangle of curly Moroccan hair jumbles like Hokkien noodles with each rhythmic nod of his head. He is concentrating, eyes shuttered. The mournful melody is played slow, spare, lonely. Lean, sinewy fingers shimmy up and down the instrument's neck. Notes yawn and camber. The sound is resonant, arcane, haunting. He has performed this piece umpteen times before. Fingers and bow arm animate with independent muscle memory. The rest of his body idling. The cellist busies himself with the audience, scanning. He glimpses a woman in the crowd, perched like a tropical bird. Tall, elongated, sinuous neck curved in an S shape. Rainbow-colored hair, spiky and barbed. He's seen her before at open-air concerts. By the second movement, her eyes are glistening like sea salt, her chin trembling like an open flame. Once upon a time, he too felt something, could feel the notes burrowing, stirring desires and furies, obsessions and slings. Each note igniting an involuntary sound to color burst of tourmaline blue, ballet slipper pink, antelope brown, disco purple, and hullabaloo red. But that was then, before he lost touch, before he played by rote. His eyes scrutinize the bird woman over the black horsehair bow as it zigzags across the fingerboard, keeping the notes light and thin, like nose dives down the instrument's cavernous C, 2 octaves below middle C. Her avian limbs respond with a sudden flutter. He wants to know her story. He imagines she comes to feel the dark sonorous sea impaling deep within, excavating buried emotions, memories, and experiences. She is overcome by the cello's vibrations, the bow lurching, snapping, and shuddering, and for a moment, she is made whole. When it pauses in a semi-brevi rest, she holds her breath, folds up. It is only when the cello throbs that she can let herself go. He plays for her. The cellist leans in, the notes undulating, enveloping, serpentine. His lips pucker and purse, his mouth bursting with delicate, tiny prickles. Something marvelous percolating, something sudden, something altogether new. With each note, he tastes a distinct flavor, soon a medley of sumptuous maraschino cherry, black mission fig, Malabar pepper, Saskatoon berry, Madagascar dark chocolate, and Kentucky bourbon tickle his mushroom-shaped papillae. His head is swimming, saliva swirling. He is back. His performance astounding. The concert over. He packs up his instrument, lasering through the crowd for a chance to meet her. But she has already flown away. A migratory bird.
Excuse me, Paul. Carol Davidson Haggerty's been trying to be let in the meeting room. Could you guys let her in? She's been waiting to be let in.
Well, I don't have a place to let her in from. I don't know. I want to let her in.
Okay.
Let me try another page. Okay, can anybody help an old guy out here?
Dad, I wonder if there's a little thing at the top. If you look at the top of of our heads, if there's a little bar.
Here. That's usually where the bar is.
You never had trouble finding a bar when I was growing up. Just kidding.
Sorry, the little wise ass is going to have to now.
So it's not up at the top.
No, it's not.
Hmm.
Well, I don't know how to get her in. But while we're working on that, I'm gonna,
Paul, do you have a section that shows all the participants in the room? Do you have like a sidebar or anything?
sidebar.
Is there like a list of the participants, either like listed on the side, or is there a little icon maybe at the bottom that says participants?
I do have.
You go, if you go to the right to the,
Yeah.
on the bottom, there's 3 dots that says more. And if you click on that, it'll go to the top. It should say participants.
Mhm.
I don't have anything that says more.
Okay.
If you hit participants, it should show you everybody who's in the room and everybody who's in the waiting room.
You may have to go out of full view to see that.
Participants, Alt plus U.
Waiting room would be up top, and they would be kind of like fuzzy because they haven't been let in yet. So if you don't see a person at the top of the list saying like in the waiting room, then it could be she's in the wrong waiting room.
You know,
You could also assign somebody else to be the administrator temporarily if somebody else is better at
well, that's
this.
Gloria. She's
I'm
the,
happy to do that.
Is Gloria here?
I can do it. If you make me co-host, I'll see if I can let her in.
co-host. Somebody's trying to get in. How do I make a co-host?
If you click on her name on the list of participants, or if you hover over her name, there'll be a little 3 dots that show up.
If
And
I
then
hover over what?
if you hover over her name,
Whose name?
like,
Over Gloria's name,
yeah, whoever you,
on her little box.
Mhm. Then you'll get the 3 little dots that should give you an option to make co-host.
Okay. Make host.
Host or co-host.
Host will do it.
Co-host is probably better, but
Co-host is better. You don't want to undo your host.
I don't have a co-host.
It should be there. It'll say host and underneath co-host.
No, it says underneath rename.
Well, even if you make him, she makes you a host, you can unhost yourself and make him a host after you finish this.
it may stop the recording though.
We don't want to do that. Because it's so nice to have it recorded and, let me see here. No. Well, I guess we won't be able to let her in then.
Who is it that we're trying to let in?
It's my friend Carol Davidson Haggerty. She was waiting. She tried to log in around 6:15, but the show already had started. So then I told her to wait a bit and we try again. But it's okay if she's not there.
She'll have to maybe watch the recording, I guess.
Okay, that's
So
cool.
here's the other
Yeah.
thing that's going to happen now. I said I'm going to do a giveaway. So I'm going to give 3 books away. I'm going to give Peak, Kiss Kiss, which was a finalist in the National Indie Book Awards, and Becoming Mursky. So I know what the numbers are for the people. Gloria, pick a number.
7.
That goes to Caprice.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited. Thank you very much.
You want Kiss or Kiss Kiss or Peak? Or do you
I'll
have?
take Kiss Kiss. Thank you.
Okay. My pleasure. Yeah. Always a good audience. Give me another number, please, Gloria.
15.
15. That would be Nancy Stolman. I would be surprised if Nancy didn't have all my books, but
I do have all your books, so I am happy to gift it myself, or if there's anybody here that wants it gifted, I would be happy to gift it as well. I have all of your beautiful books and I'm happy to spread them.
so I will give you Peak and you do with that as you please.
I will gift it to an appropriate reader who needs to read it.
Okay. And the last one,
25.
that would be Patricia. Darn.
Thank you. Thank you. So grateful to you.
Becoming Mursky, okay for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, I will sign it. You'll send me an email with your addresses.
I sure will. Thank you again.
My pleasure. And the next reader is Niels Reddick. Who for some reason I don't have his, and he sent it to me twice. But you all know Niels. You're going to read the Corner Store. That's in the.
Hey, Paul, congratulations on Becoming Mursky. I love this book. Well, it looks horrible in the background of my screen. I guess you can barely, I don't know why it's doing that. Anyway, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this. And I will tell you that I always look to you. You are the master of this Flash genre. At least one of, I think all of you are masters of the Flash
Look around.
genre, and I appreciate so much being a part. And I learned something from all of you. But Paul, the story that of course, I love the stories that Karen and Nancy and you read and your son. I chose Corner Store to read out of this collection hopefully to honor you tonight. And so I'll start with that. Ray Heyman was not only tough, but crazy. Out of school as much as in, fighting, stealing lunch money, and bagged lunches too. He was lean but muscular and only 5'6", and even the football players kept their distance. He lived half a dozen buildings over in the projects, His apartment was one on my paper route, and every so often when I rang the bell for the weekly payment, his mother would tell me to wait, and Ray would come to the door. "Hi, Ray," I'd say, "collecting for the paper." And he'd say, "No jingle this week. Take the paper, then shut the door." And I'd nod and chalk it up to business expense. Once he was inside the corner store playing pinball while a half a dozen of us were milling around outside waiting for him to leave so we could play. I was the smallest and the chunkiest. The door opened and the other guys backed away, and I said my usual, "Hi, Ray." And he said, "Give me a quarter." All I had was a quarter, and that was 5 games. And sorry about the spam call in the middle of the reading. Geez, they never stop, do they? I was the smallest and the chunkiest. "Hi, Ray, give me a quarter." All I had was a quarter, and that was 5 games. So I shook my head. "Sorry, Ray, no can do," I said. "I'm going to kick your ass," he said, lunging head down to butt me in my soft belly, but fear took over, and I grabbed the collar of his jacket and pulled it over his head and pushed it down and kneed him in the face. And then, while his zipped up jacket was still over his head, I punched him with rights and lefts until my hands hurt, and we pulled his jacket back. Tears were streaming down his face, and I knew I was going to get my ass kicked then, but he said, "I'm going to tell my mother," and ran off. Understand now, I've had fights before and lost almost every one, but this was different. My friends treated me like a hero and even paid for my first pinball game. 20 minutes later, house coat and apron flying, Mrs. Heyman stormed into the store and pointed out me. "You porky pig, little son bitch, you had no call to hurt my Raymond. When his brother gets out of prison in 2 weeks, I'm sending him over to slice you up." I tried to convince my mother we had to move and move quickly. She told me I shouldn't be fighting, and if we could move, we wouldn't be living in the projects. Ray's brother, Roy Albert Heyman, was finally released from prison, and his picture was on the Bridgeport Post's front page. He walked to a gas station after the bus dropped him off in some small town, and he swiped car keys from a guy who was filling up, and then went into the station and knifed the owner, grabbed a pistol, and cleaned out the register. The police showed up after getting a call from the driver who had his keys swiped and was hiding in the phone booth. Roy Albert blasted away at them, hitting one cop in the chest, trying to get away to a getaway car, but he got shot in the leg and the gun jammed. He dropped it, put up his hands, surrendering. He was tackled and beaten bloody and senseless and never made it home to slice me up, and I don't expect he will. So I stopped delivering papers to Ray's house, and I never said, "Hi, Ray," again, not even after his brother went to the electric chair. And I love that story, Paul. Congratulations again. I'm going to read a very brief
Thank you.
piece that just was picked up by Barely South, which I think is at Old Dominion University in Virginia. The title of this is "Dewey Come Home." Out to Korea, he went to a picture he had taken when he was promoted to corporal. He was dressed in his formal military uniform, the cap tilted right, covering most of his jet black hair, a trait he'd inherited from his ancestors, mostly Creek Indians who lived along the Ohoopee River in southeastern Georgia. His thin-lipped smile and his black eyes revealed a young man full of life and ready to see the world which the Army promised. He was happy to get out of southern Georgia, didn't have to fool with cropping tobacco, making turpentine, or running the still on the island in the Okefenokee swamp full of gators and snakes. His mother cried and hung the picture in a frame in the unpainted dog trot house that had a dirt yard she swept with a homemade broom. She worried and fretted about Dewey every day while keeping house and doing chores, while her husband was in the deer woods hunting game for meat to smoke and to last them until next year. If he didn't get a deer, he might bring home a rattler or a raccoon. But when the military vehicle drove the long dirt road and she saw the dust cloud moving closer, she knew it wasn't time for the mailman or a joyrider, and sat in the straight back chair praying, "No, not my only son." The man in a freshly pressed uniform handed her the telegram and said, "I'm sorry, ma'am." And she could see his Adam's apple swallow and knew he was. Dewey's daddy knew when he came out of the deer woods pulling a gopher turtle they'd cook, and saw her sobbing and shaking. At night, she hoped to see Dewey in her dreams, maybe see his whole battalion led by General Douglas MacArthur advancing along the eastern banks of the Chosin Reservoir in North Korea, where they'd come under attack, were taken prisoners, and brutally beaten and tortured until dead. But she never saw him, didn't hear his screams or feel his pain. But her husband heard her whispers and cries at night, "Dewey, come home." The absence of Dewey in her was filled by a tumor in the spring, and she was buried at the Wayfair Cemetery, where generations of their family were covered by the white sand along the Alapaha River, where Dewey's daddy would join her 10 years later after a cousin found him in his truck in the ditch, the old truck's engine still running to get him to a hospital 15 miles away. Nearly 70 years after Dewey went to Korea, the Defense POW/MIA Accounting Agency received 33 boxes of remains from North Korea, which were sent to the Central Identification Lab in Hawaii to undergo forensic analysis. One of the sets of remains was identified as a 31st RCT soldier killed near the Chosin Reservoir. To identify Dewey's remains, scientists from the Armed Forces Medical Examiner System used mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosome analysis. His coffin with remains landed in Jacksonville, Florida, in a caravan of military and law enforcement vehicles, flanked by fire trucks flying the American flag on their ladders, outstretched toward heaven, along with people in small towns, lined the highway, bordering the Okefenokee swamp, ball caps removed and held across their chest, and a handful of senior citizen cousins who only had vague memories of Dewey's short life, sunk their shoes, canes, and walkers into the sand at Wayfair while Dewey came home. Thank you all.
Great reading, Niles. Thank you. Francis Witt, Columbia Market delivers. And do you want me to give you a bio?
Yeah, I think I sent you one, didn't I? But it's okay. It's okay. I'll just read. So hi everyone, and it's really nice to be here and celebrating Paul's new book, and congratulations, Paul. We're all very thrilled for you and thrilled for us to be able to have a new Paul Beckman book. And I also want to just say what a wonderful member of the Flash community you are, having this reading, both, at first at KGB and now even better on Zoom, so we can have all these wonderful people from all over the globe, So again, congratulations, Paul. I'm going to read a story called No Tchotchkes for Tanta Trudy. And my mother always pronounced it Tchotchka. I've heard it pronounced Tchotchke, but my mother always pronounce it tchotchke, the plural being tchotchkerai. And just in case you're not sure what a tchotchke is, these are tchotchkes. These really, I bought them on eBay. I went through this little thing where I was buying all these salt and pepper shakers. God knows why. And they wouldn't be tchotchkes if I actually used them as salt and pepper shakers, rather than what they are used for now, which is collecting dust. So, no tchotchkes for Tante Trudy. Dear family, as of this date, I would like you all to begin referring to my mother as Tante Trudy instead of Aunt Trudy, Trudy, or Hey Trude. Since the passing of Tante Yetta earlier this year, our family has been without a tanta. Tanta, a word that connotes the first among equals and shows wisdom, generosity, and commands respect for her place in the family. Since my mother is now the eldest of all of her sisters, the mantle rightfully falls on her shoulders, and who better to take up this position? Having spoken to several of you, I know that you agree it's time to make it official. Understand now, my siblings and I do not expect her sisters or brothers to call her Tanta, but it would be only right to use the term when speaking of her as has always been the case with the late New York Tantas, Rhea, Pearl, Bessie, and Yetta. We, my brother, sister, and I, want you to know we mean no disrespect to any of our other loving aunts, but this family has been too long without a Tanta, and Tanta Trudy has agreed to step up to the plate and fill this void. In the spirit of family unity that our family is known for, there will be a welcome Tanta Trudy picnic at one of the cousins' houses. I'll let you know which cousin in my next letter, but the date will be Labor Day, so save the date. As you are all aware, it is only proper to welcome in a new Tanta with a gift. So instead of you each bringing a tchotchke that Tanta Trudy will have to dust, we have decided that a new 70-inch curved screen smart television picture-in-picture would be the perfect gift. Please send your donations to me as soon as possible so we can surprise Tanta Trudy before her party. If there is any money left over, we will use it to buy Tanta Trudy a new comfortable lounger to use in front of her new TV. Sincerely, Cousin Marvin and siblings. So that's Paul Beckman for you. No tchotchkes for Tanta Trudy. Wonderful story. And then my story, 1918. Like every other night, Finkus creaks the splintery door, slips out of his only shirt, and folds it over a chair. He smooths the coarse wool with his calloused hands, wets his thumb, and rubs the spots. One, a splotch of mud from where he carried a lady's valise to the curb. Another one, grease from fixing a wheel on Goldman's push cart. Like every other night, Esther, his wife, looks as empty as bones and fusses over a stew, a sliver of beef, but mostly the potatoes and carrots that Stein the grocer was going to throw away. Scrape the bad off of everything, he told her, and it will taste like new. A little girl she was in Russia, and one night her father doesn't come home, wandered into the wrong part of town and got kicked in the head by a horse. Soon after, a smuggled trip to America, her mother only and one suitcase between them. Later, she met Finkus with his smile and his hair and his head of ideas. On her deathbed, Esther's mother called him a good man, like your father, she said. Like every other night, Finkus slumps onto the floor mattress they stuffed with old rags, too tired to eat, too weighted down with the illness growing inside of him, the illness that will kick him flat like a horse's hoof. Esther will sit alone at the table until the stew cools and washes the plate and put it back in the cupboard. Then, like every other night, Esther will pick up his shirt and soak spots with hot water and use the kettle steam to smooth out the wrinkles before she sneaks it back over the chair. And no sooner does she finish Finkus grunts himself up and comes to the table. Hungry he is for once. Tonight won't be like every other night. Tonight will be the night he tells her about the illness. Isn't that what a wife is for, he thinks? To share? He sits down in front of the still warm plate. He notices his shirt in a way he never has. Cleaner, he thinks, and smoother too. He looks at Esther for an answer. She looks at him for a smile. The clink of fork on the supper plate. She didn't ask for this, he thinks, and rather than tell her tonight about the illness, he swallows it down with a stew.
In a bit.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Franny. Our next reader is Brad Rose. And I don't know what you're reading, who you're reading to, or what you're reading about. So take it.
Exactly. Well, congratulations, Paul. You know, I love this book and I love all your work. But I owe you an apology because I don't think I really fully appreciated the kind of heartbreaking underbelly of these stories. I tended to read them quickly. And if you read them more quickly, I think they are much more humorous. And I think it's either that or this is also probably the case. I'm a terrible reader. But anyway, my apologies because I think there's two sides to each of these stories, and they're really quite phenomenal because of that.
Thank you.
Too long prolegomena. I'm going to read My Only Christmas Story. Dad was coming over to give us presents from Santa. Mom told us he didn't buy them. He got them from his Christmas party at work. Dad went up to the bathroom, which was at the top of the stairs. I was excited after I opened my one present, a Roy Rogers cap pistol. My older brother showed me how to load it. I wanted to tell Dad how much I loved this because I loved Roy Rogers. I stepped onto the landing, waiting for him to come out of the bathroom. The door was open and I could see him standing sideways, peeing. He turned and saw me looking at him. "You sneaky little bastard," he yelled. Scared, I ran and sat next to my brother and his jigsaw puzzle. The toilet flushed and then angry stomping down the stairs. I kept my head down as he called me a wicked, evil little boy. "Now give me that gun to your brother. You lost it for being a sneak." I got up and ran into the dining room with it and he followed yelling at me. Mom walked out of the kitchen and stood with her arms folded. Dad stopped yelling and stared. I fired 2 caps at him and he turned and walked to the front door. He looked around and Mom had moved in front of me to block him off. I reached around her and fired 2 more caps and he stormed out of the house.
Thank you, Brad.
Yeah. And then I'm going to read a short piece. You know, I remember this quote from Anna East Nin, who said that we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. And I think there's a lot of truth to that part. And then I'm thinking about how I've misread some of your stuff. In any case, let me misread some of my stuff. This one's called Good Luck, Mr. Goldilocks. Like air conditioning in the winter, document shredding can be a beautiful thing. In fact, thanks to my autobiographical blood, all morning in the bathroom mirror, I've been practicing my tight-fisted happy face. I'm so handsome, I'd like to ask myself to dance, but just take a look at these bohemian teeth. I'm hoping for a suspended sentence. Fortunately, it's not what you say that matters, it's how you say it. Sure, I've made a couple of bad turns here and there, but if life is one giant simulation, why can't there be a happily ever after for everyone? Thank goodness the robots know us even better than we know ourselves. Good luck consists of all the bad things that don't happen to you, and a couple of winning lottery tickets. Yesterday, when I told Miss Kitty not to worry, I'm sure things are going to turn out just right, she said, if you're really lucky, Mr. Goldilocks, life is just one long sleepover and no bears. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Our next reader is Cindy Rossers. Cindy's the editor of Yellow Mama, named after what else but a electric chair. And I don't know what you're going to read, Cindy.
Well, I'm going to start with one of my favorites of yours, Mom Met the New Neighbors. Is that okay? From the Yellow Mama archives. You guys want to hear that? It's one of my favorite of yours. Okay. The new neighbors moved in while we took the weekend off camping. My mother went over with a plateful of her cookies, but my father stayed in front of the TV. He's not so social. Mom came home and told Dad that the new neighbors would be coming for dinner Friday night, and Dad grunted his displeasure. Just because we're in witness protection doesn't mean we can't socialize, Mom said. Dad looked out the bedroom window and saw the couple walking over. He told me to hurry up and get his gear, and since he doesn't kid around about that, I pulled up my closet rug, opened the trap door, and got his long, hard case and scurried back to him. Get downstairs with your mother, he said while screwing the silencer onto his rifle. Then in a flash, he had on the scope, slapped the magazine, jacked one into the chamber, and slid the window up a couple of inches. The man and his wife both looked up at the same time. He tossed the wine bottle, she the flower bouquet, and both pulled out their pistols. Dad dropped the woman one shot just above her right eye, and the man looked up, nodded, and holstered his gun. He turned and walked back to his house, got in his car, and drove off. Dad saw the look on my face. She's the one I ratted on that got us into the program, he said. We're safe now. Her boyfriend is FBI, and the one that placed us here. Minutes later, the ambulance showed up and carted her body off. And the next day, the moving truck came and loaded up. Dad didn't say much, but I knew he wasn't looking forward to sending Mom out again to check the new neighbors when they finally moved in. I love that story, Paul.
Thank you, Cindy. It was just for anybody who's paying attention, that was not from the Mirsky book, but it was one of my stories in Cindy's magazine. So thank you.
I didn't get the Mirsky book yet. I'm still waiting. Okay, I'm going to read something of mine now that's really short. It's called Hasidic Mini. It's based on somebody in my family from our old world Italian culture. My name is Domenica, but people call me Minnie. In Italian, Domenica means Sunday, my least favorite day. Sundays meant mass, fidgeting in a hard pew board, and later family dinners. Thick, meaty gravy over rigatoni or spaghetti. Didn't it all taste the same? I hated the family too, my fat, nosy sisters. Who was that boy? Mariana demanded. I'm telling Papa, he'll kill you, Teresa said. And Mama, who made me start school a year late so she wouldn't be alone. But back in the 1920s, nobody cared. Aren't you glad, she'd say when it rained? Wouldn't you rather be here nice and dry? In the window I sat mournfully as huge raindrops beat down on the sidewalks. A year behind, I was feeling like a dunce. Lightning flashed. Before thunder even struck, Mama squealed. Dropping her sewing, she ran into the closet. I hated sewing too. At home, we didn't use machines. My fingers shook. Needles pricked them so. Minnie, Papa yelled, you must be more careful. There's blood all over that shirt. Papa, who I hated the most, with his big garment business, those factories, poor girls with bleeding fingers, machines drew more blood. If he knew about me and Stu Sallow, Pop would kill me. Stu with his curly black hair and pale blue eyes like Rory Calhoun's. Stu had the gentlest touch. Stu the Jew, Papa would call him. This special task Papa had for me, his daughter. Go down on Market Street, smiling, he handed me cash, like this was a treat for me, and check out the prices of fabric. Haggling, he meant with the Orthodox Jewish merchants, the Hasids. That much? I said, even though rayon would cost more. Are you crazy? What about cotton? The merchant looked ready to explode. You're crazy, he said. You expect to pay less? Around us, the streets were bustling, the sun beating down on people with better things to do, maybe fun places to go, except for the soldiers heading overseas to fight that monster. Who would guess this poor merchant with his curly sideburns and yarmulke? Stu Sallow was over there already, with a spirit of adventure. Want to ride? He patted the seat of his motorcycle. Papa will kill you, I pictured Mama saying. What if you fall off, crack your skull? What if I don't, I thought. I need to go over, Stu told me his last night. People are dying in camps. My little cousins. Unlike me, he loved his family. Imagine guessing a 3-year-old with his crippled grandma. He wiped my tears as I couldn't stop crying. That night I risked more than my skull cracking. I couldn't take it anymore. Mama, Papa, those bloody fingers, and no pay ever. Smiling, I left Market Street, empty-handed. The price will be the same, the merchant yelled after me. Tomorrow. Tomorrow was years ago. Papa couldn't kill me because he never saw me again. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. And ending the program is Bill Merkley. Bill's work was included in Best Microfiction 2021, nominated for Best Small Fictions 2022. Most recently, he's been longlisted for the 2023 Smoke Long Grant Micro Competition and the 2024 F Novella and Flash Award. Very impressive, Bill. He's going to read Project Olympics.
Thank you, Paul, and congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm going to read The Project Olympics Are Not for the Faint of Heart, because it's anarchy worthy of the Marx Brothers. And when I read it, it made me want to have some of whatever Paul was having when he wrote it. I'm in the Project Olympics, signed up to be a hurdler. When the gun goes off and the kid next to me keels over and blood is squirting from his neck, I take off and I look behind me and there's a flock of cops in uniform chasing us hurdlers, and my fellow runners are ahead of me, and they're all wearing double-breasted suits, wide hand-painted ties, fedoras, and spit-shined floor shimes. And I look at myself in the window and I'm wearing the same. And then we come to the first fence, and since it's only 3 feet off the ground, we all hurdle it. But being last, I hit a button, and after I do, a traffic light turns red and the cops come to a stop as we continue. My brother and I are sitting on the stoop playing 500 rummy with the cops and robbers running by, and he says how much he'd like to be a cop and wear a uniform, and I tell him I want to wear a double-breasted suit and floor shimes, and he deals and tells me he's special because he can dream in color and I can't. But he's all smug, and I tell him I dream in black and white, but it's 3D. And he says, prove it. And I say, you prove I don't. We stop playing and take a walk and see 2 rabbis playing hopscotch, and across from them is a wrestling ring. And there's an all-nun tag team match going on, and I sense something isn't right. I yell over and try to get the rabbis and the nuns to change positions, but they all attack me for getting in their business. Embarrassed, my brother goes back home. So now I'm falling again, and look around, and my legs are attached to a bungee cord, and I see nothing, and no one until my mother steps out of a cloud and gives me the look and hands me a helmet. I'm walking around the Bronx Botanical Garden, and a guard walks over to me and tells me if I want to stay, I have to remove both the bungee cord and the helmet, which I do. I ask him where the cactus exhibit is, and he says, I'm a guard, not a tour guide. Now get out of here. And he hands me back my helmet, straps it on, and rehooks me up to the bungee. I'm getting hungry, and there are chain restaurants all around. So I maneuver to the pancake house and walk in, but they toss me for not having a shirt or shoes. And there happens to be a shirt and shoes stand where I get what I need and put it on my credit card, and I'm asked by a teenage boy wearing a "Hello, my name is Acne" sticker if I'd like a table or a counter, and before I can answer, he tells me if I take a table, I can have a coupon. So I do, and I pick up the menu, and it only has 2 items, a short stack and a tall stack. And I notice the coupons for the tall stack, so I order that. And I get a 4-foot-high stack of pancakes with 1 butter pat and a garden hose that says maple syrup. The gun goes off, and I start eating, and I look up just as "Hello, my name is Acne" gets hit in the arm with the starter's gun bullet and goes down. Now I hear my mother yelling at me to take a nap, and she shoves a cumulus cloud beneath me and tosses a cumulus pillow down, and I nap, and I'm watching The Jazz Singer with Al Jolson, and it's in color, but not 3D. I wake up in time to look down and see my house and yard, and the cumulus cloud dissipates, and I'm heading straight for my koi pond and execute a belly flop, knocking all the koi out of the water, and sore as I am, I go to them and start apologizing, and I grab the big gold one with the black streak, and he shakes me off and says, "Come on, guys, there's better ponds for us fish." And they stand up on their little fish feet and walk off, and I'm thinking ingrates all, since I've been feeding them for years now. So when the herons come by, I point my finger at them, walking to the next yard. My mother comes out and asks where the hell I've been, since she's been holding up dinner. So I go in and change, and when I come out, my mother's talking to the wrestling nuns, the 4 judges are at the bar, and it's not a cash bar, and the herons are sitting on top of the raw bar eating shrimp. The cops are pinning Olympic medals on the crooks, and my brother Shelley is arguing the Torah with the rabbis and winning. I love that poem. I love that so much.
Hey, Paul, will you send me some of those mushrooms, please?
The kids are
Maybe I don't think you need them.
And I'm going to read something that I've read in FBomb before, but it's the one story I have that I think comes close to being Beckman-esque. It's called Cupcakes. Our neighborhood on East 59th Street was an urban backwater, a still pool off the main drag, where everything and everybody swirled slow and lazy. As kids, we hoped, no, we knew, one day we'd catch the current of Kennedy Boulevard and be swept away forever. Sundays were the worst. Once noon mass let out, most people got raptured away to their kitchens and living rooms, or to some out-of-town relatives, real ghost town outside. TV was dull after the Bowery Boys finished their routines. Whatever Mom cooked always involved boiling water that steamed up the windows, made the apartment feel even smaller. This Sunday was like every other one. The corner store was closed. Me and my friends Dwayne and Izzy stood at the glass door, coveting Hostess cupcakes resting on wire racks just beyond the doorway. Cream-filled devil's food delight with white swirls on top of chocolate icing, taunting us from the door's dusty shadows. I was 5, Dwayne and Izzy were 6. "If we bust the window, we could get some cupcakes," I said. Dwayne went round the side of the store to the gravel parking lot, came back with the corner of a cinder block, and heaved it through the door. The glass shattered the day like a starting gun. Izzy was in and out and down the street before anyone else showed up. Dwayne stood there expecting thanks. I stepped back saying, "Look what somebody did." The dads paid for the door. I was still allowed in the place, but I never saw the other two after that. Some of us really did manage to get out of that neighborhood. I heard Dwayne was somebody's bagman when he got killed. Izzy's probably in office or in jail. Me? I've always been an idea guy. I do all right. Thanks.
That's our show for this evening, folks. I can't thank you enough for being as generous with your reading and your comments as you were. And so I'll just say thank you all. So many of my favorite people are here, which is
I hope so.
doesn't hurt either.
We love you, Paul.
Yes,
The
we
Flash
do.
Fiction God.
Proud of you.
That's
So
that.
proud of you.
So good, Paul. Such a
Yeah.
great book.
Thank you. Um, yeah. Send me whoever won a book. Send me the book you won and your address and to my email, paul@paulbeckman.com, and I will get it out to you.
Okay, we'll do that.
I'd like to return my book.
Congratulations, Paul.
Oh, you taking questions?
Yeah. Come see me. We'll talk about it.
Love you, Dad. Great,
Thanks.
great.
Randy, you're cool too. I like you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy.
She's
Paul,
just
she's
out of the
After
awesome.
my
You're
old
an
man.
awesome daughter.
She's just out of the orphanage. She's doing.
Yes. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Congratulations again.
Thank you all for coming.
Yes. Congrats, Paul, and thank you for doing this every month.
Congratulations, Paul.
Thank you. Everyone. Boston, good to see you.
Good to see you. Congratulations.
Thank you. I hope you read next month.
Oh, I'd like to.
Well, I always chase you to read, so you're a good reader. Good stories. Zvi will talk soon.
Okay. I'll give you a call tomorrow.
Maybe it's real too soon. Franny, good seeing you.
Good to see you, Paul, and congratulations again.
Thank
Hi,
you.
It's wonderful.
Francine.
I was wondering if I
Thank
needed
you.
to have a thesaurus that went along with all the Yiddish words in there,
Oh, yeah.
but
I think people get the context of it, but I just wanted the opportunity to show off my tchotchkes.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, terrific.
Well, thanks again, Paul, and good night. See you
Good
soon.
night. Thank you,
Night,
Franny.
everybody.
Let me know when you.
Okay, good night. Good night, Paul.
Thank you,
Paul.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Thanks for coming from New Zealand.
Yeah, thank you. Been great.